How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the show today. Today, we have an excellent guest joining us. Yes, the one and only Josh McCallen, co-founder of Accountable Equity and host of Capital Hacking, top-rated podcast. Josh McCallen is a nationally recognized hospitality executive, conference speaker, innovator, builder, and investor with a track record for developing exceptional resort properties and growing world-class operational teams. Mcallen began his professional hospitality career overseeing a landmark hotel in Austria. For over 20 years, Mcallen has led luxury residential and hospitality construction programs, building numerous businesses and brands worth more than $150 million. His latest, the historic Renault Winery Resort, saw a 100% year-on-year profit in 2020, despite COVID shutdowns and restrictions. And Josh also hosts Capital Hacking, one of the top 1% global podcasts about entrepreneurship and real estate. Josh, my friend, so good to have you on the show. Been really looking forward to this. Welcome.
Dave, it is. It's like we're good friends. We got to spend time at one of those conferences together and took pictures. And it means a lot to me to be invited on your show and to get to know you better. We even shared stories about our children, and thank you so much for inviting me on.
Absolutely, Josh. So maybe we should start there and tell the audience that, because I used to think that I trumped everyone saying that I have triplets, and
that's a big deal, actually.
It was a big number. It was big at the time, but tell everyone how many kids you have.
So Dave, we have no luck having triplets, no luck having twins, but yet we got the double digits, which is something I'm very, in a funny way, proud of. The fact that our family's been around 25 years almost. My wife and I have been married, and now we have 10 children. Believe it or not, it's hard for me to believe. I'm one of two, so I was not from a big team. But 22-year-old lady and a 2-year-old little guy named Coyle. And about the breakdown is 6 ladies and 4 dudes, and we're having a great time. It's a different way of life for most people. I didn't know this way of life, but it's a lot better manageable than you think, right? I think most people think it's harder than it is. Triplets, my wife and I think, would be harder to do than what we're doing, because for you, everybody's the same age. For us, we have some bigs, some mids, and some littles. So the littles are pretty much taken care of, right? We got adult women, adult men in the house. They're fine.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, it's definitely a zone defense style. Let's just put it that way. We move way past man to man, but that is really awesome, Josh. And I'm sure that gives you, a lot of fuel towards your purpose and your cause.
Well said. Most people don't say that on a show. I'm actually really grateful you said that. It does actually give us cause. But my wife says, because we get to be in this hospitality and in private investing now, and she says, well, she makes a joke when she speaks, but she hates to speak, but she's the best. She'll say, well, Josh and I are pretty much in the people business, people making business, people loving business, because hospitality is all about loving people. But it is my whole purpose is wrapped up. It's thank God it's very aligned, meaning not everybody gets to have so much alignment. Our purpose in taking good care of our kids, purpose in making sure good work for our teammates, purpose in trying to deliver something really special. The way we do hospitality is different. And then isn't it cool that teammates like you and I get to have investors join our projects? So now we said, well, then maybe that's our ultimate feather in the cap of our mission, is to be able to let private investors have assets that we buy things that are historically trending in the right direction and just awesome resorts. Typically it's the billionaires that own these types of things, but we make it possible for everybody to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's so much purpose, in what you're doing, what we're doing, and focused on. But I do love that purpose with the kids. And to me, that was one of my initial kind of last straw moments in this whole thing, right? And I'm sitting there, I had already cycled through a few different financial planners in the early days. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get 4 kids through college? How am I going to cover retirement and have some kind of, life? I mean, the numbers, no matter how many times you get promoted, you keep getting cut down with taxes. How are you going to get there? Right. And, really wanting to provide for your family and make a real life was a huge motivator for me, as I'm sure it was for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you
So,
being so good about explaining that to everybody on the other side, because most people feel trapped a little bit, even if they're
yeah,
very high earners, salespeople, business owners, they feel a little bit trapped. But I'm all yours. We can talk about how some of
agree.
the things you and I've
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah. So this is a great segue, Josh. I mean, why don't we talk a little bit about, your background and what
Sure.
got you into the hospitality business? How did you get into, private equity?
Sure.
How did it all start for you?
Yeah, for us, it's like a daisy chain. It starts with us being a scrappy young guy, all the way back in being a kid, growing up with a single parent and a lot of government assistance and all that kind of background, which some people can really respond well to. Other people's it can be a heavy burden. But for us, it always felt like, okay, well, wait a second. If I just go to work, I can put money in my pocket and pay for the own bills. I don't have to worry about the fact that the family can't pay for it. So for me, work always felt great. I mean, I love it. And so at 12, from that point on, I always had enough money to pay for whatever we needed. So that leads into college, and then ultimately had a cool experience to live in Europe as a administrator of a whole old hotel. Actually, it was an old monastery from 700 years ago. Now it's a boutique hotel. And then I got to work there with college students as an administrator. Bundle all that up and say, well, okay, so that's like our first 10 years of marriage, Melanie and I. But what happened next was we came home after years and years of living in Europe and Austria, outside of Salzburg. You can picture Maria von Trapp singing in our backyard. If she was younger, I would have been chiming in with her. The hills were alive, brother. They were alive with the sound of music. So we were over there having a wonderful village experience. You could walk to the grocery store, walk to restaurants, and I just was really touched by it. So when we moved back to America, I had this passion. I said, someday, honey, we're going to be in land development, and we're going to develop human scale land development or projects where people's souls are uplifted by the buildings and by the experience. And she's like, you're crazy. You don't even have one friend that knows how to build a building. So fast forward, I used lending as my pivot. So I left Europe, used residential lending, which of course anybody can start in residential lending. You just have to live on sales commissions. So you're allowed to start tomorrow. Everybody listening, go become a sales guy or lady in lending and you'll get a job offer, because it's that straightforward. But if you think of it as a stepping stone, which is what we did, you'll end up learning how loans get collateralized and how investors look at loans, and then how developers need loans and how to approve them for lending. And then you'll meet the developers. So that's what I did. I spent a year trying to meet land developers, broke into residential, helping a big family office, which I didn't know what that was back then, but now we're part of that world a little bit, knowing that world. So they had plenty of family wealth, and now they wanted to disperse their assets into real estate. So I got to help them. And it was their capital, our sweat equity, to help them build buildings. I got a nice little paycheck, which is great, no equity. And then one day after the recession of 08, they said, well, wait a second. We started buying hotels on the beach in New Jersey for New Yorkers and Philadelphians on their summer, really affluent areas, but with dumpy hotels. Because you can picture even the Hamptons has kind of modest hotels, but tons of money, right? So what happened was, over the generations, the money went there, but the hotels are still old. So I said, what if we could build a prototype hotel in New Jersey that we could use as a restoration project? Maybe we even get on TV, maybe we do all that. And we'll transmute our love for building houses into love for building hotels on the water. That was our vision at first. We created a very successful brand for that family. And we earned a piece of equity. Fast forward years and years later, we had built so much wealth for that family, and they offered me a chance to leave and take a small bit of a piece of what we built. And there you are today. Now we've created a syndication group or a small private equity group called Accountable Equity. And what we're doing is the same work we did for the family offices, but now we get to do it for 150 to up to 300 great people that never would have had the privilege of doing these kinds of wonderful projects. I would never have had the privilege of doing these projects if it wasn't for the good people. So it's a win-win model of fundraising and of operating. And on top of that, there's this whole other story about hospitality. But hospitality over the last 9 to 10 years, we got our teeth kicked in for a while. The operational part, even with the family office's money doesn't buy you good service, really. You have to train. So we learned how to train our teammates. And if you can picture the Northeast of America, beach resorts are awesome for June, July, August, September, maybe. And they're not awesome any other time of the year. So how do you swell to be a big, big company in just a few months? and then contract without losing money, you train. And so really our entire heart became almost like a philosopher of what service can do for people and how to teach to be a servant, and to see that as a dignifying thing, not a humbling thing, not a negative humility, a positive humility. Anyway, that pivot mentally and emotionally became our ultimate calling. So we really pour into our people so that they'll pour into our guests. And yes, of course, we make a lot of money for the investors, right? It's like, it's in that direction. First, build the right culture that people have the 3 hallmarks. And this is my last part of your answer. The 3 hallmarks of the way we serve and the way we train to serve is everybody on the team must agree to want these 3 things. Not that they're perfect. Joy of service. You have to come wanting to serve, or else this is going to be really bad for you. 2, you have to seek humility as a strength of character, not as a weakness. And we'll teach you what we mean by that. And then 3, we ask you to join our ministry. It's a ministry of serving with love so that the person feels respected and loved. That's what we mean by ministry. Ministry defined is doing something special and spiritual, even though you're using simple tasks, right? The goal for us is so that people feel loved when they leave. And if you just switch the idea of delivering great bar service and great restaurant service and great wedding service and great hotel service as a transmutation of love, then it adds all this value for us workers, and it adds all this value to the guest, and it's the same work. So those are the secrets that were revealed to us over the years. And now we know why we're on the path to buy so many good resorts.
So powerful, Josh. Absolutely love it. And it's definitely one of those things, you see that what is the difference between entrepreneurs who are really scaling successful businesses? It's people who have core values, right? And traits and principles of how they run their business. That's the difference. Everyone says they're great at doing something, but when you tie in those values and then you uphold those values, right? It really becomes instantiated with the people, that is really a massive difference. And, you can see it. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to get to one of the resorts. We have a few investors who've invested, and just everywhere I go, people are saying just awesome things about the resorts, not only from a return perspective, but, people have fun there, right? People
what a
have
surprise,
fun,
right?
People are getting married, especially during the pandemic.
Yep.
I mean, all these things, and then people are having transformational life events at these places, and you're able to uphold these values and everything, which I think is just super powerful, right? For the team that you're building as well as your investor community.
It takes my breath away, Dave. I mean, first of all, we got to get you out to one of the properties. We're hopefully going to acquire several more this year, but this year, right this minute when we're listening to you and I, it's outside of Annapolis. We own a major portion of an entire island called Kent Island. It's just gorgeous. I'm looking out at the marina outside right now, and a beautiful 200-year-old inn, really successful wedding venue in its first full year already. And then up at Renault Winery is the one that, wonderful. All of your friends and my friends are invested in, hundreds of us, MC Laubscher and all the great people. So you know what, you said it, but I want to just hit it because I didn't even really think about it when we first started this process. You and I can get somewhat close returns if we buy into multifamily. And I love multifamily. I'm a big fan, but you really don't ever get to go see your own property. But when you own a resort and you drive down to go see it and eat dinner and bring friends, it is a totally powerful experience. And this is the other thing I didn't see. You treat it like you're the owner. Now you might say, is that a bad thing? Are they going to ask for free things? No, nobody asks for free things. They want to pay their bill. But what I love is they'll bring 5, 10 other families to have a party there. And they are a true portional, fractional owner. So it's like I've multiplied that. What's that called? Pride of ownership. We've multiplied the pride of ownership. I'm sorry that I'm stuttering, but you can imagine what I'm talking about, right? Like I'm proud of it, but so are you.
Right. No, it's completely exponential, right? This is the difference between, renting a place and how you feel if you rent a place or you lease a car versus if you actually own it, right? That pride of ownership. You're absolutely right. And I mean, what other types of investments can you get into in the private equity world that, you can see, feel, touch, and really, isn't this what this is all about, right? Mm-hmm. This is all about experiences, right? So when you're, you're getting your returns and then you get this experience on top of that. I mean, it's a home run, Josh. I mean, it's really, really awesome.
Dave, you're more than kind, but I think you actually feel it almost through the microphone, right? You could feel like, wait a second, I'd like to just be on a boat at a place where I actually own, or I'd like to be on a golf course that I actually own. I'm telling you, at first we saw it as more like mathematical returns, but now over the years, we ended up developing that other thing that you're invited to. And I'd love for you to even tell us if you'd like to be a speaker at our Learn and Grow Mastermind, where on top of just having a normal project, we like the idea of letting our investors share each other's beauty. I mean, they're wonderful people. So then they're all, in the accredited status. They're great people. They're either business owners, salespeople, doctors, dentists. So they just want to meet other like-minded people. So what we did is we created this forum 4 times a year, no cost to them. If you're an investor, just come and have a full day, catered meals, get to meet the staff, kick around the tires, get to know everybody. And we move it around the property. So you may be an investor necessarily, let's say in Renault, but in the fall, you can have a day with us all at the property down there in Annapolis. It doesn't matter which property we're at. If you're our investor, we host you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome, Josh. So we'll come back a little bit, right, to the resorts and some of the operations, but let's talk a little bit about wealth strategy. And I know we talked about this on your show, and our viewpoint is really, and I think you share this as well, is it's a wealth strategy, right, for a reason. This is a very holistic view, right, that you want to put in place to protect and grow your money, to multiply your money, to, position your mindset, position yourself, and all of these different types of things. So tell us about your personal wealth strategy,
Sure.
As that's evolved for you, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I can tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we had a fundamental shift, and this is a rare opportunity that I do feel privileged. So I was working for that very wealthy family, and because I grew up thinking the harder you work, the more you make, I'd never stopped working. We were very aggressive at buying properties. I did the construction management. We did the training. We were there when there were crises. I always thought, oh, here's how you make wealth. You run your business really well, and the proceeds are the profits. Well, there was a new shift in my mind about 6 years ago when we had finished 3 mega turnarounds for the family office. And all of a sudden they did a bank refinance. Okay, Dave. And I was owed a portion of that. And I thought to myself, oh, that's how the wealthiest people think. They build up the asset. They do earn profit from it, but that's not the actual way that they benefit. The big time is sometimes they'll do what is called a refinance. And then they'll pull down money out of the debt on the same business they already own. And for most CPAs, that'll be a non-taxable event, depending on your CPA. So now they have millions and millions of dollars all at once instead of 150,000, 500,000, 700,000 a year. They do get that too, but maybe it goes down a little bit because they use it for debt. But now all of a sudden they have 5 extra million or 25 extra million, which is what happened in our case, almost 40 extra million. All of a sudden, whoa, I was like, what? Here we are trying to make $1.5 million a year, 2 million a year in profit, thinking that's amazing, right? And then all of a sudden I watched how that can be transmuted through debt into big, enormous capital events. And that was a big shift. And then that's a big mental shift. I just want everybody to kind of embrace. And then you have to say, well, how do I get a piece of that, Mr. Dave Walcott? I don't have $10 million or $100 million to start projects like that. Well, I'm sure you guys talk a little bit about Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the cash flow quadrants. Have you guys ever talked about that on the show?
Absolutely. Yes.
It's all about picturing that crisscross, guys, ladies. You're driving. As Dave said, he loves my old joke. I say, if you're driving in a Tesla, you don't even need to hold the wheel. Just grab a pen and paper, draw an X or a crisscross. And at the top left, you put the employee money comes in, W-2. Below that, self-employed money. This is how the money works. And this is how the wealthy think. The B means you own an operating business that you don't have to work at. That's the top right. And then I is the bottom right, the investor. And so this guy, Tom Wheelwright, who works with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, says, if you want to invest if you want to be treated the best by the tax code people, you need to have a B, a big business, or an I, or both. If you want to get hurt by the tax people, then have all your income come as an employee. He's not saying being an employee is a bad thing. He's just saying that's where you get hurt the most with taxes. So this mental shift of using debt as an investor that allowed him, this gentleman, to have non-taxable cash. It's sitting there. Now he was an investor. So he then took the cash. He didn't go out and buy Maserati, cool stuff. He actually bought more properties, which is actually why the tax code wants you to do it, right? This is what Tom Wheelwright helped you and I learn. He's like, the reason they give you these benefits is so you actually start more businesses. And I watched with my own eyes. That is the natural instinct for a proper entrepreneur. It's like, great, we built nest eggs. Now in my world, I take investors. He didn't. So now what do? I pay it back to the people who gave us the money up front. And that's the magic. If you're listening to Dave's show right now, guys, and you've only ever invested in mutual funds, what I'm about to say will break so much of your strategy in your mind. There's a way to actually have cash every year. And after about a 5-6 year period, get the cash back. And depending on where you invest, sometimes you get to still own the thing you invested in. Try that in Wall Street. If you ever want your 100 grand back from a mutual fund, how do you get it back? You sell it.
Yeah.
It's just stuff that you and we've walked through Alice in Wonderland's looking glass.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh, this is how the wealthiest
this
people
is
think.
it. That's gold right there, Josh.
Yeah. And that's how my whole mind is shifted. Yeah. So for the truth being, I've put everything in on red. So we have two basic strategies as a family. One, we use whole life insurance to make sure we have large overfunded life insurance policies, which are like savings accounts. I can't explain that perfectly, but it's really powerful. Call me if you want to find out.
Yeah, you're using the infinite banking strategy.
It's so cool.
Yes,
I do that for like
amazing.
A safety net.
Yep.
And then I overinvest, and this is positive or negative, depending on your perspective. I overinvest in my staff and my business. So Melanie and I have a philosophy that 5 years into this, we'll start really pulling capital for ourselves. But until then, I'd much rather have what sounds crazy, but a very expensive executive team so that the company is safer, better, stronger, and more diversified. And so, yes, that is me taking cash that we could use to buy a minivan and putting it back into the business by putting the best and most important thing of a business is the people. So we really, some say we spend more than anybody else in our space on leaders, but we really want the best leaders. Why? We're not the smartest person in the room. We want a smart room. So we heavily invest in B, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, right? Because, and if you look at the risk return profile, right, typically businesses have the greatest return profile that's there, right? They also have the greater risk. However, if you're running the business and you have complete control of that, right, you can manage that risk. You can put your foot on the gas pedal when you need to, and really grow that. And that's how the ultra wealthy are really, making their fortunes, right? It is, as you said, it's not only being an investor and a really prudent investor to access such as these, private investments that we're talking about, but it's also managing businesses, successful businesses, scaling those. And that's where you see really exponential returns. And, I really like your philosophy on the strategy. And I think it's something that really is underlooked, but because frankly, people were conditioned by this $30 trillion stock market, right? That just says, put your money with us. You're not smart enough to manage your own money. So just give it to us. We'll take care of it. But in reality, all they're doing is pretty much hitting the indices, right? At the end of the day. But what we're talking about doing is really multiple different things at one time, right? We heard Josh talk about the infinite banking strategy that he's leveraging for protection. It's providing you liquidity. It's providing you compounded tax growth. You can pass it to all those wonderful kids of yours without any probate or taxes. That's amazing. You'll never outlive your money, and you can actually create tax-free income streams, from that. So super powerful strategy. And then as you look at assets, like you were talking about, really, really powerful, right? Because the wealthy people are not selling their assets. They're borrowing against them to buy more assets, right? And continue optimizing the asset base that they have.
That's a mind bender, isn't it, Dave? The first time you broke through and learned that, I'm serious. It was about 6, 7 years ago when I first watched the family office do that. And honestly, when growing up, I thought you ran a really great roofing company someday or whatever, a framing company, so that you could have a bigger paycheck every year. That make 500,000, take 500,000. Well, the rich are doing it on real estate. Typically, businesses within real estate are the holy grail. A roofing company is wonderful. Okay. I love it. Great. Smart idea. How about a business where the business is attached to mega amounts of real estate? That's like you get two assets in one. And that's kind of what the resort world is, right? We have really large cash flows, but it's grounded. It has real estate value. It has building value. It's really cool. It benefits from inflation, all that good stuff. Oh, and it's better financing, right? A roofing company has one type of financing. A company that has real estate has a much better financing structure,
which absolutely
creates wealth strategies better.
Right. So Josh, this is a really good segue. Let's talk a little bit more specifically around taxes, right?
Okay.
Because I know that's a key strategy, not only of your personal wealth strategy, right, but of your existing business. As you probably do, we have lots of conversations with people about depreciation, cost segregation studies, things like that, right? But let's just talk about how you're deploying that, right, within your existing business. How does that work? And then how does the investor really take advantage of that?
Big topic. Dave and I are about to break into a big topic, and it may be overwhelming if you haven't thought about tax this way, but remember, go back to that one book, try to download it if you haven't heard it yet, my friends. It's called Tax-Free Wealth with Tom Wheelwright, and he'll teach you one phrase, which I'm sure Dave has told you before, which is if you want less taxes or no taxes, you have to change your facts. So he has a funny phrase. He'll say, if you want to change your taxes, you got to change your facts. Tax facts. It rhymes. And the facts are, you cannot do any games with the IRS. You can only follow their code unless you want to go to jail. So none of us want to do anything wrong or anything. So what we're doing is exactly following their code. So wait, you're like, Josh, wait a second. Their code says pay taxes, not get rid of taxes. Well, their code actually allows you to depreciate, and you brought the word up. And on page like 34 or something like that, Tom Wheelwright calls it depreciation is like magic. The IRS lets your income be depleted. So you make 100 grand of rental fees this year in cash. You took them. They're in Mr. Smith's bank account and Mrs. Smith's bank account. But then when you do your taxes, your building you bought a new HVAC system or whatever. It looks like you lost $100,000. Why? Because of something called depreciation. And that's a deep question. But watch what happens. The IRS lets you say plus 100 in cash, minus 100 in paper losses or depreciation, as if the building's wearing out, which it kind of is, right? But it's as if the building's going to be worth zero eventually and all the stuff in it. Well, wait a second. If you do that in the same year, 100 up and 100 down, how much do you make? According to the IRS, you made nothing. And people get a little confused. They're like, oh, so the IRS thinks you made nothing? Well, they know exactly what you're doing. You're following their code. It's just that there's no profit left, therefore no tax. And maybe that made a mental connection for you, your teammates, whoever's listening. So anyway, so fast forward, this plagued me. Our resorts actually have tons of passive losses annually, meaning you depreciate things, you continually are buying things. So our investors typically do not have a tax liability for the income they make from us. And that's up to them and their CPA. So when we went out to figure out how to finance equipment, this is the nuance we came up with. We looked at the normal ways to get equipment for restaurants and golf carts and all the good stuff that resorts need that make us money. Catering equipment, tents, chairs, all the stuff we charge rent for to our guests sometimes. And we learned that in our industry, I've been doing it for a while, it's typically a lease contract with Bank of America subsidiaries or US bank subsidiaries. So you're signing a contract that allows them to own the equipment, even though you have the possession of the equipment. And I always wondered why they do it. Like, why does Bank of America and all these people let me hold the equipment, pay them monthly, and then I get to keep the equipment when it's all over? And it was never called a loan. It was called a lease. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then actually I watched our friends, Dave Zook, do it with ATM machines. I'm like, oh, the structure is they're keeping the depreciation. Yeah. So we broke out and created private leasing companies for our investors. And this MC Laubscher always used to tell me, he's like, you really want to not, if you're going to have an expense, what if the expense went to an investor and became an asset? And so what we've done is create these $2, $3, $5, $10 million leasing companies. Instead of us going to Bank of America to get equipment to run these properties, we'll just let our friends and investor friends own the leasing company. So we will literally sign a monthly payment contract into a private leasing company that we all own, you and me and the investors. We will keep and own the equipment and allow the IRS code to work to the perfection, and we will depreciate it in year one. Lots of details there, but bottom line is that's why we call it the efficient income funds, and we're up to like 4 of them now, mega successful. It allows the investors to get money back really quick, all their invested capital and some yield. But the bigger reason is that they use it to offset other income, passive, not work income. Anyway, lots there, Dave. I don't want to over explain, but that has become a really special part of our life. And we have hundreds of people that really appreciate that every year. We do it every year.
Yeah, no, I think that's such an awesome strategy that you put together recently, Josh. And tell us from a depreciation standpoint, I mean, you're purchasing equipment, right? Obviously for your resorts. So are you at 90, 100% depreciation on that?
Thank you for asking. If all things could be wonderfully perfect in this world, it could actually be 100% passive losses. So you write $100,000 check or even a 50. By the way, sometimes I have these start at $10,000. So they're meant to be strategic tools for investors. So if you only have $10,000 of passive income, then don't overinvest in this. Use it to its perfection. Offset that with an investment in a passive loss. So typically it can be 100% typically, right? But we never promise 100. We say between 90 and 100%. So you write a $10,000 check, you're going to have what is called a minus statement from us, our K1, because you're the owner of the fund. Therefore, you're the owner of the business. So you get to write it down because you own that equipment. So that's that word depreciation. So buildings take years and years, but equipment right now only takes 1 year this year. It'll change in the future. But for right now, if you buy a business piece of equipment, the IRS specifically says you can write it off in 1 year, even though it's going to last 30 or 15 or whatever it's going to last. 15 years. They let you write it down to zero. So you write a $10,000 check, you get a negative $10,000 profit, meaning you get a fake loss. But over here, you're making money. We're still writing you checks every month. But now you get to offset something else you already owed. You owed money on, maybe you have a big, gigantic rental portfolio that you've owned for a long time, has no more depreciation left, and you're going to pay taxes. You could actually choose to invest about the same amount and pay and remove the taxes from your problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me stop you right there for a sec, Josh, and let me kind of summarize that for investors, right? And this is what's super powerful about this concept, but people may not think of it in the broader context, right? Again, we kind of talk about the traditional way that we're all taught is to put money in 401ks in the market and stuff, right? So let's say you were to save up a nest egg, you have 4 million at retirement at age 65, and they're going to follow the theory, which says you're going to withdraw 4% a year and hope you don't outlive your money. So 4%, right, on 4 million, you've got 160K pre-taxes, right? So that's probably more like 110, 120K, because I'm sure taxes are going to be going up. Now, if you compare that to what Josh was just describing with this depreciation, let's say you had 4 million in assets in his EIF fund and some other investments, private investments, right, that are kicking off depreciation and everything. You could take that same 4 million, and then let's just say for round numbers, you're making an 8% cash on cash return. So now you're actually making 320K with the same amount, right, of capital. And by the way, if you're doing it right with this depreciation concept, that 320K is completely coming to you tax-free. You're not paying any taxes on that, which is massive. And your capital appreciation still keeps growing, right? Every few years when you have another liquidity event, right, that capital keeps growing. And that's really how you build legacy wealth. So I think it's really
job,
excellent.
Yeah. You did a great job. I mean, part of these shows and why I'm so honored to be on your show today and other shows and my own show is we didn't grow up this way. I did not know this. Okay. Even as an adult I was the president of a big resort company. We had 500 teammates seasonally, and I ran 20 or 30 million in revenue annually, never had a clue about this. So it's not just you who's listening right now that doesn't know this. Almost no one realizes this is the way the rich have always done it. This is why the tax code has here. You want to hear the stat? This was a Tom Wheelwright stat. He goes, there's a 6,000 page tax code. Page 1 says, here, I'll read it. Page 1, you're seeing my notes, right, Dave? You can tell the audience. Page 1, all income is taxable unless stated otherwise, meaning this is the IRS writing page 1. Page 1, second paragraph, nothing is deductible unless stated in this code, right? So first sentence, all things are taxable unless we state otherwise. Nothing is deductible unless stated otherwise. Then it has 5,999 pages about deductions. So that's amazing, right? So Tom's basically saying the first page is what we all thought. Oh, yeah, I just got to pay 100% taxation. Right. Of course I do. Right. I mean, whatever's taxable, everything's taxable. Then he has 5,999 pages that explain how the wealthy have always done it. You and I are unlocking that for normal, good families now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really like, Kiyosaki always said, right? I mean, this country is just lacking in financial education, right? We're learning all these other skills and things like that in the academic world, but we're not learning how to get smarter on our financial future. And that's where you can really have the greatest impact, because again, I think wealth, actually, this is a great question for you, Josh. Describe what wealth really means to you.
There's a couple different definitions. I think the generic one, a good one, is it allows you to have the freedom to choose the things that you can contribute to the most. So if you have financial independence, which could be called wealth, then you may end up dedicating your time to build your company, but it's going to be more of a mission and a ministry, and you still might do just as much hard work, but you'll be doing it for you'll be able to come from a different point of view. So wealth is the idea that money, I think the money, you have freedom from the daily grind, but you also comes with this good bit of responsibility, and accountability is in the business name that we created on purpose, because we didn't just mean one way. We always try to have multiple layers to our names, and accountability is, I have a good friend, Bob Wells, who defines accountability. I have like other ways to define it, but I love his, which is you have the ability. I can't remember what the last phrase is, but his point is, it's not that you're being punished for having accountability. It's that it's proof that you have ability to control, in a sense. So it's not a negative word, but my point is, yeah, we have to make these choices, and learning and listening to good people like you and I, it takes time. You don't have to make any decisions after you hear a great podcast like Dave's. Maybe it just opens that window, and then you're at a dinner party with one of those famous wealthy people, or someone who's wealthy in your life, and you hear them say things like, well, we own this warehouse business, and what we're going to be doing is leveraging it to buy 7 more warehouses. And you're like, wait a second, that means he's going to pull money out of warehouse 1, pay 0 taxes, and buy 7 more warehouses. And why is he going to do that? Oh, because now you get 7 paychecks or 8 paychecks instead of 1 paycheck. And he didn't actually write a new check. It's like mind bending, but this is the beginning of the iceberg, right, Dave? It's just the beginning of the iceberg.
It's just the beginning, right? And there's another great Kiyosaki quote, right? Is your financial IQ equals your net worth, right? So the more you can learn, the deals just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and multiplying, and your risk goes down as well.
I think your risk does go down over time. Listen, at the end of the day, one of our themes in our capital hacking show is that really capital resides, I think human capital is more important than cash capital. So that's why you and I'm an avid listener to these shows. I love these shows. I listen to more shows than most people in America. And I also listen to books and read books every week too, So we all have to kind of get out of the matrix. I used to joke, the matrix is telling us drop it in the 401k.
Right.
There's a reason it's like a monologue, right? It's like the booming, drop it in the 401k. Don't ever invest on your own.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, excellent. Josh, so just switching gears for a sec, running a super successful business, super successful father, proud father, right? You've accomplished a lot. So from a personal development perspective, what is the one practice that has yielded the biggest results for you?
I actually have the answer to this one. Sometimes it catches me off guard, even though I've heard it before. It's this year's focus on delineating goal setting down to action plans and being more detailed about milestones and really charting the course in precision. My life has always been pretty clear what I was working on. And I think it was communicated well to the teams, but not all the way down. And as we get to be hundreds and hundreds of teammates now, it's becoming more and more obvious that I'll end up being the bottleneck if I don't change again and again. So setting goals with precision and with action plans.
Excellent. And if you could just give one piece of advice to listeners that would significantly impact, their wealth trajectory from what you've learned, what would it be?
If I can give two, one is just in my heart right now. So it's just, maybe there's a reason I'm about to share this, but my wife used to always say, you can be replaced everywhere at work, Josh. You just can't be replaced in the family. So the kids that are your kids, doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, there's just never going to be you that can't be replaced. However, every single company, they could find a way to do it without you. Okay. So that's just an important wealth strategy of people are just so much more important than the cash. But from a wealth strategy point of view, I'm a big believer, depending where you're at in the equation of your wealth growth, I would encourage people to start with house hacking or the strategy of house hacking. And to me, that simple premise, which is buy a house that you can rent out the rooms and not have to pay, it actually exists in 100 different ways, right? People who want to buy an RV this year, but they buy an RV and then put it on an RV listing agency and they actually get paid to own an RV. I just love that double win strategy. Starts with house hacking, but you could hack everything. I have a friend, Dave Van Horn, that talks about college tuition hacking. You ever hear that one? Where he saves up for his kids, they save up, and they don't pay $1 for college. They go get all the loans they can for college, take all their money and buy a duplex in the town where the college is. And then they sell it at the end to pay off the debt. It's great, right? I mean, there's all kinds of strategies.
Yeah, that is gold right there, right? And I so wish, this is what gives me so much fire, right, about this business, Josh, is, when I was looking back and I've got 4 little kids, and you're wondering how you're going to, pay. And I was so diligent about, $100 a month I'd put in their college 529 plans. And I'm telling you, they got to college 18 years and it was like a 5.5% return over the long haul.
Yep.
And had I, had this knowledge, and I was doing some of that college hacking like you talked about, or leveraging the infinite banking strategy and put it into, the EIF fund or some syndications or something. That is completely the difference between going to like a state school and going to a private school for all of your kids.
Yep.
Right. So it's pretty huge.
Remember Robert Kiyosaki? We're talking about him like he's dead. He's not dead. He's wildly alive. But he wrote stuff like never say I can't do it. Say, how can I do it? And that permeates good entrepreneurs. And you can take that and do that in your own private investing. Here's the last secret, Dave, and this is why you and I do shows. The network and the community that come around these shows will help you. Even if it's not just you, Dave, or me, the community that surrounds these shows, or these shows that are moving in this direction of financial independence, of take some responsibility for your own investing in a good way. There's so many great people like this. There's such an abundance mindset. I go to the real estate guys seminars all the time. Anyway, my point is start with the people, the first person that has a personal relationship with you, or a community that you've come to get to know, and just take one step. You don't have to write checks. You just have to get into the community.
Absolutely. And that goes to you're a product of the 5 people that you spend your most time with, right? So when you start spending time with like-minded people, other professional investors who are talking, in these ways, and you get new ideas and new exposure, new insights and things, can be super powerful. Josh, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Can't wait to get out to one of the resorts really soon. Now that things are finally kind of opening up and getting a little bit more freedom is really awesome. How can our listeners get in touch with you, follow more about what you're doing?
It's an honor to let me say this, but there's the fun way would be capital hacking. We have a ton of fun there. Dave's show happened about 30 shows ago, I think, or 25 shows ago. So you can hear Dave on capital hacking. But where I live, my day job is at 2 words, accountableequity.com. We have free ebooks there that explain what we do in very simple language. And we're just trying to build a community.
Awesome. Josh, thanks again so much for coming on today.
Thank you, brother.